Now, without further delay, I'd like to turn today's call over to your first speaker, Chuck Tomasi. Chuck, you have the floor.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to TechNow, the web series for ServiceNow administrators and developers on a wide variety of their Now Platform topics. I am Chuck Tomasi from ServiceNow. I'm Senior TPMM, been here for just over 9 years. June of 2019 was my 9-year anniversary. Very happy to be here and very excited about today's topic as well. I bring a wealth of experience to both ServiceNow and the community in general. I'm not going to read every bullet on the slide, but suffice it to say, I was a customer for a couple of years before that, which is really where I cut my teeth on the Now platform. And as a customer, it's funny, I knew about today's main topic, but I didn't really have a chance to dig in until someone said, let's do that on a TechNow episode. So I'm very excited to share with you all the ins and outs of what I've learned, even some new features that have come along in the latest release. So with that, I am going to hand it over to Kreg for his introduction.
All right, and I'm Kreg Steppe. I'm a program manager for Cloud Lab, or Services Program Manager for Cloud Labs, and I handle a lot of the infrastructure that we provide for our classes in the Training and Certs department at ServiceNow. I've been doing that for quite a while now, and if you've been in Knowledge, you've probably seen some of my work in the workshops, providing the virtual machines that you would use to do the labs. So I've been specializing in cloud automation at ServiceNow, and I've been here since 2014. So I'm at the 5-year mark, and I'm slowly becoming a senior. I guess slowly. I want to emphasize slowly. So anyway, I've been co-hosting with Chuck, and some of my podcasting hobbies, are podcasting, photography, and Linux, among other stuff. I got a little bit of everything. And now I will turn it over to Stacey.
Hi, everyone. My name is Stacey Bailey. I am honored to be a part of this podcast. Like Kreg, I'm also in the training department as a program manager for application development. Like Chuck, though, I started off as a customer, and then I spent a few years as a partner, and now an employee. And like Chuck, my experience with the email client goes back several years, so it's an oldie, but a goodie. So we're looking forward to delving into that today. All right, Kreg, let's continue with the agenda.
Yeah, so today we're going to take a look at the easy way to preview your mail scripts, and Chuck's going to walk us all through that. And we're also going to take a look at the email client inside ServiceNow. And of course, I have a little Q&A session. We'll be trying to answer the questions as we go through today's presentation. And if you missed it last time, there's a chance that you can do it again. We can go over to Knowledge, and before you know it, it's going to be 2020. And before you know it, Knowledge 2020 will be upon us, and it's going to be a lot of fun. I know last year there was a lot of good stuff that came out of it, a lot of great workshops, videos. But you can watch the videos, which is my next point. So put it on your calendars. May 3rd through 7th is Knowledge 2020. And you can go to the Knowledge website at knowledge.servicenow.com, where you can view a lot of those videos, a lot of the content that we presented at Knowledge, the demos and the keynotes, all that good stuff is on there. So go over there and check out the video library at the Knowledge Now. No, after this. Don't do it now. Do it after this. Which leads into, Knowledge itself is built for customer success, because without your success, we don't succeed. So we want everybody to come along with us. And you can go over to servicenow.com/success and go through some of the success stories and scenarios that you may be trying to overcome, or maybe you're trying to do an implementation. You want to see how somebody else did it. There's a lot of white papers and lots of examples on how to implement what you're looking for in ServiceNow from the Customer Success Center, because you're not alone. Other people have done it, different, rolling out different applications, and we're all here to help you. So you can go to the Customer Success Center and go through the navigator, and it'll walk you right through the questions and get you some answers. So also, speaking of getting you some answers, You can go over to the Developer Center at the developer.servicenow.com, and you can find all kinds of information if you're trying to make something yourself or get your hands dirty trying to build some applications. You can get free developer instances. There's learning plans. You can look down the bullet item. I'm not going to read them all here, but lots of videos and code examples, as well as the documentation for trying to implement whatever you're trying to do in ServiceNow, or just trying to learn. It's a great place to go and get some information and help. And with that, I'll turn it over to, Stacey, you're doing the community quick tip?
I sure am.
Yeah.
All right, now community quick tip today has to do with notifications, kind of related to the email client. So we thought that this might be a good one to share, quick and easy. So here I'm looking at notifications in ServiceNow. And as you know, there are quite a few. I've got 235 out of box just in my developer instance here. I'm going to just take a quick filter and look at the ones for incident management. And if we take a look at these, we know that several releases ago, mail scripts were introduced, and it kind of changed formatting. So rather than defining these mail scripts in line, they're moved over to notification email scripts. We can take a look at how these render. This particular one had several all together. But if we look at mail scripts, there are 94 of these out of box. So it's kind of difficult when you're working with clients to figure out, what notifications you want and what mail scripts you can reuse here. So if I take a look at notifications for incident management, email scripts, we've got preview those with customers and say, hey, here's what each one looks like. Let's pick and choose, see which ones might be good starting places for what we want. There's an easy way to preview these. We can filter the list here. Unfortunately, we don't have a table column, so we just have to look at naming conventions. We'll export these over to Excel, download those, and we'll just zoom in here just a little bit, turn this into a table. And then as you saw with the notifications, there's a certain format for calling these in notifications. So you can see that it's $, curly brace mail script, colon, and the name of the mail script. So we can insert a new line here and make a formula in Excel that essentially just generates the call to the mail script. Okay? Not too difficult to do, but it really will result in something pretty handy. We've got 14 of these here, 13 lines, and we could come to our notifications, create a new one. This is a good thing to do just in your developer instance. Set the table, set a trigger, and then in what it will contain for your message, paste your table with the scripts, save, and now when you preview, you essentially have created a catalog of what each mail script actually will render. So we can see incident additional details. Here's what it actually looks like. This might be something to work with your end users to say, hey, is this suitable? Do we use this as a starting point? How do you want to tweak this? And it gives you kind of a good preview. You can do this with any of the notification email scripts, any table, and just preview that here. So I hope you guys find that little tip helpful in working with customers.
I like it. That's awesome. Thanks, Stacey.
Yeah,
I didn't think it was so easy.
Yeah, it is pretty cool.
Without every once in a while when you need it.
It almost reminds me of the what is it, Kreg, in Evernote, where you can create a table of contents. You just highlight a bunch of documents and say, make this a table of contents. That's kind of what it's like.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe we can get our product managers to do something like that in the platform so we don't need Excel. But for now, that's a
Get coding, kids.
That would be awesome.
All righty. I think we're on to the main topic. So without delay, I'd like to start talking about the ServiceNow email client. And as I mentioned earlier, this is one of those topics that I knew about as a customer, and I did some work with it, maybe even added it to a table, but never really went much beyond that. And there is so much more to the email client that I found out as I was doing research for this. I went, oh, another one. And somebody even asked me in the community last week a question that they said, I'm going to ask you on the webinar if you don't answer it now. I will provide that information as well, just so I'm glad they challenged me to that. But before we begin, real quick introduction. The email client is available from the three-dotted menu next to the UI actions up on the top of a form. And if you pull that menu down and you see email, that table has the email client turned on. And when you use that, you get a nice form, which I will show you in just a moment. But before I go too deep, I'd like to know how many people out there on this live webinar are currently using the email client to some extent on either incident or change or custom table or whatever. They've configured this, or they've just turned it on, or they just frankly use it. Or maybe you've turned it off. That's one form of utilizing the email client is we don't want people to use it. So you know of it. You've got a familiarity to it.
And you're not talking about Eudora or Pegasus Mail or something old like that?
No. The built-in email client in ServiceNow. Thank you, Kreg.
Yeah. Right.
And we will give everybody a moment to tap in their answer. I mean, it's a yes or no. You can't really get it wrong. You've either dealt with this before or it's totally new, and you say, no, I know nothing of it. That's why I'm here. And that's fine. So I think it's a wonderful feature, and maybe you will see some new capabilities and go, yeah, let's start using that, or let's take advantage of some of these new things that came out in Madrid. And our answers are about 3/4 of you are using it. That's wonderful, and I hope I can shed some light on some new capability or drill in deeper and highlight something that you go, I didn't know that. If not, hey, feel free to comment back in the Q&A, and we'll get there. I also want to point out there is a live Q&A, as we had heard in the introduction before the webinar was recording. If we don't get your answers answered live, because sometimes they come in really, really fast, and there's just a handful of us trying to answer these live, we will be responding to these in the community afterwards. So we will take every question, every answer. If it's not answered live, we'll answer it afterwards and then post it to the community post where you find episode 64, and they will all be there. In fact, you'll get an email if you ask a question or not. You'll get an email that says, hey, here is your question, and a link directly to that in context. So we'll have that for you. Try to give you the best experience out of this webinar that you've ever had. Let's move on with a demonstration, because I'm not going to bore you to tears with all the ins and outs of this particular feature. People said, we want more demo. You get more demo. So I want to first show you where the email client is. As I mentioned, from that menu, I'm going to bring up an incident, and with all demos, latency is always extra high when you're doing a live demo. It was fine a minute ago, I swear, before the camera started rolling. And up on this More Options menu, you'll find this on most forms. There's email. You go, well, I don't see that on mine. I'll show you how to turn that on where it needs to be. When you click that, you get a little pop-out window that has your typical email stuff. Who's it to? Who's it from? Who's it going to? What's the subject even? What you can put in the body, and some features that aren't here that I will show you how to enable as well. So that is the basic bones. I mean, you can use the paperclip and the attachments show up, so on and so forth. That's the basic framework. I'm going to go to a custom table that I made for my safety issues and note that this menu does not have email. How do you turn it on? Well, to turn it on, you set an attribute called, unsurprisingly, email client in the dictionary entry for that table. So if I use the form menu and go down to configure dictionary, I get the table entries, the custom fields, the table definition, which is denoted by this collection. That's how you know which one is the table. It's not a field, it's a collection. Why it says collection and not table? I don't know. I'll have to ask one of the people who set this up in 2004. But if I drill into the dictionary entry, I have an attributes-related list. I could create a new attribute on that and say email client, and the value is true. That's really all it takes to turn that on. Now when I go back to my safety issue, in fact, I'm going to be there so much, I'm going to pop it out in another tab. So I just hit Shift-click to bring that out, or Command-click on my Mac. And there's my email client, looking very much like it did with the incident. It takes the number and the subject. This is the subject, really. It's a sample record in Latin, but you can see it ends with Volputate Maris, and sure enough, on the end, there's, I hope that's not anything offensive to anybody, but my Latin is a little rusty. So note that attribute, that email client equals true, can be set on any table. It's not just stuff that's extended from task. So if you've got a custom table that is extended from nothing, you can still use that. That's it. However, you may say, how come all of my people don't see this? Okay, Chuck's running around here as an admin access. Of course it's going to show up. Admin gets everything, right? But I've got a safety manager that doesn't have access to this. There is an access control. So if you look under system definition or system security access control, and look for the one that says email client processor, you will see one ACL with an execute that says, here is who gets to play with this thing. And currently it's defined by these roles in the embedded list here. ITIL's on by default. If I want to add my safety people, I recommend creating a new ACL that has these same top attributes: processor, execute. I mean, normally we deal with read, write operations, and this is a little different, so pay attention to the fields, and then put in your roles for your application. That way they get access for that application. In this case, it would be x_snc.safety user or whatever it is that I would put in here. So don't modify the out-of-the-box one. That, of course, is not best practice, because if for some reason somebody were to come along and modify this, you're going to miss out. But I would go ahead and create a new ACL and grant those people access to the email client as they need. So the other reason you may not see this is the email client option. I'm going to do this from here. Safety issue is if you are creating a new record, because the email client is trying to pull information from fields that don't exist yet. So you go, where's my email client? Oh, I haven't created a record yet. It's pulling those from the record information. So once I save this record, I will then see the email client. So don't be surprised. That one actually caught me off guard. As simple as that seems, I went, I'm putting in another note so I can remember to share that. Okay. So there's two main aspects to configuring the email client. One is email client configuration, and the other is email client templates. One affects the behavior of the client itself, how things are presented. The other affects what is presented. So let's begin by first going to the email client configuration, and you can find this under email client configuration. I needed a favorite because we're going to be here a lot. And you can see by default, there is one that says, I am the default configuration. So if you have nothing else, of which my safety issue table does not have a configuration, you can see there's no table in here that says safety issue. But what I can do, it's going to use default by default. Good name for it, right? And that comes out of the box. I added another one called problem. And in the default configuration, there's a number of things. I'll switch to global so that we can actually see these things as editable fields because they belong to global. And it's got a name. It says I'm the default configuration and it's active. It also has this new feature added to Madrid called recipient qualifiers. Now, when you're looking at the email client, I'm just going to leave that up there. By default, I have a number of users in here that are inactive. Thomas Jefferson, Abraham Lincoln, George Washington. I'm pretty sure they don't work here anymore. They went off and did their own startup. Something about, new country, colonies, that kind of thing. But I can put in Chuck, and it says, oh, I know who Chuck is. Yeah, let's take that. But if I try George Washington, I don't have George Washington because he's inactive. And I'll show you where those are configured in just a moment. We also have the display configuration, which fields we want to display on the form, and also filter configuration, which I'm going to come back to in a little bit. So let's go ahead and set one of these records up for our safety issue. And I'm going to set this one up a little bit differently. Safety issues on the table safety issue, not the issue table. Done that a couple of times. So watch your table naming. This is the one for this application. And by default, it throws in active users and active groups. A logical assumption, since often you don't want to send mail to people that don't work here anymore. However, I am going to use one that I built out earlier. Let's get rid of these, called all users. See if I can get my hands on the right home row keys. This includes all those users.
Yeah, and by the way, Chuck, I was going to say, I know in the system that I'm using, there are times when I have people in like the watch list. They're not actually users in the system, or maybe the users in the system and they're, might have somebody that's not active, but they still need to receive a notification. That's something that you want to keep an eye out for.
Yeah,
so
and remember, this is table specific. So I can define a different behavior than the one on incident or problem or change. So yeah, that's a very good thing. I'm also going to change the from. I'm going to put that on instead of reply to. So let's save that and see how that affects my form. So let's go back here. You can see George says, I don't know who that is. I'm going to reload this form. I'm going to refresh. Reload. There it is. Thank you, Chrome. And now my from address is out there. I have all users, so I can say George Washington. There he is. Or who's the other one? Abraham Lincoln. Whereas I could not select those people before. So just a real simple, what do I see? What do I get? How do I get it there?
Hey, Chuck. Also, I see that you've exposed the from field in there. Can that be customized to be from the person sending the email or some other email address besides the instance at ServiceNow.com?
Oh, yes. Yes, it can. Your segue is a little early, but good question. Before I go on, are there any questions we need to address in the Q&A?
Well, that was the one from the Q&A.
Okay, good. Yes, you can. And you can even restrict who's displayed there. So I'll show you that in just a moment. The second piece of this is the email client templates. And I'm going to, where are my client templates? There they are. They're under system policy client templates. And you can see we've got a whole bunch of them. Again, these are table specific. And they're also conditional. So you say, I've got 3 of them on this email table. Well, I'm going to build one out. I just made that client configuration in global instead of safety. Shame on me. I was in the wrong scope. Let's go back to safety. I'll do the rest of my work in the safety scope now. But I'm going to create a new client template called default safety issue. And of course, put that on my issue table, the correct safety issue table, which is right there. And note that we have conditions. So I could have a different email client template, which contains a different body, a different subject, per state, maybe per CI, per location, per user language. You make it up. You can have a number of these. The funny thing about this is the conditions have been there for years, but only in Madrid did somebody discover we should probably expose those and add them to the equation of when they take effect. So as of Madrid, you'll see the slightly different form layout. Note we also have an execution order, very much like any other execution order on the platform. If there's not necessarily a conflict, but an overlap. If you've got the same table, same conditions, you can use the execution order to determine which one takes precedence. So I'm not going to use a condition, which means it will apply to all issues. And I'll put in here, you've got an update on, and put in one of the variables from the table in our traditional mail format of curly brace or $curly brace format. Thank you for reporting your issue dollar short description has been updated. Okay, and I can save that. Now the recipient is who it's going to go to. This is simply field names that you put in. No curly braces here. So opened by is one of the fields on the safety issue. So I can put that in there. I could also put in CC and BCC if I chose to as well. And then the sender configuration, I'm going to come back to that one in just a sec. That's one of those advanced features. But this is what you're talking about, Stacey, about how can you modify who it's from. That's where you modify on a template level. By default, it's going to take the SMTP address, but we're going to come back to that in a little bit. So now I've got a default safety issue. I go back to my safety record, open the client, and I should see a couple of things in here. A new subject. You've got an update on. Thank you for your issue. I've got the Latin in there. I know that's working. And we're getting close. So we've got a little bit of content configuration through those email clients. Very easy to do. The other one, see how it defaults to this SMTP address, which comes from this email system properties. So if I go to email properties, if you don't know what that is, it's under system mailboxes email properties or system properties email properties. And, oh, I'm sorry. No, Stacey, you corrected me on this. It's email accounts. Email accounts. The SMTP account has the user label, IT Service Desk, and the from address. You probably don't want to mess with these. They are tied in with how it delivers to ServiceNow. So in most cases, you go, well, that's a nice default, but how does that help me here? How can I change what's displayed here? If I were to say, I want this to come from the safety department, maybe it's so that replies come back or I'm just hiding behind a generic address, I don't want to change this email account because that's system-wide. This is a property, just like any other property, or excuse me, it's an account. So let's not do that. What I can do is in the email client, where I had my default safety issue, I can go to the sender configuration and say, all right, let's use the default SMTP account. What the difference is between those first two, I don't know. Or I can just put in some text and say, this is from the safety department, aka safety@example.com. And when I save that, my email client now looks like, reload, safety department address comes up there. But you say, but Chuck, that's still an editable address. Anybody with this email client is going to know. Well, you could remove it with that checkbox from the client configuration. You go, no, don't show the from address. I don't want people jacking that up. Or you can do something I'm going to show you in just a minute on how we can use one of those other options on the client template. So any questions? Going back to the Q&A.
I just see some stuff about people wanting to use branded HTML headers and stuff like that. Let's see.
Yeah,
if you want to build standard HTML headers and footers, go watch episode 11 of TechNow. That's my house.
That's true.
We've done that one.
Yep.
One of the other things that I see in here is how do you coordinate between using the email client and your standard notifications? I think that that's something to just discuss very briefly. One of our listeners also points out that he customizes the subject line to really grab the user's attention instead of just kind of the generic such and such a record was updated or work noted. So can you talk about coordination between using the email client and notifications when you would use one versus the other?
Yeah, absolutely. And you guys feel free to jump in with your thoughts on this as well. The standard notifications are generally triggered based on something. An issue's been closed, an issue's been updated, an issue's been reassigned. Those are events that trigger a notification. You typically do those in your system logic somewhere, either directly through the notification to say when this record is inserted, you check the inserted box, and now a new record is created, you get a notification. You don't really have to think about it. The email client is an on-demand, hey, I need to send an update manually right now. It's like the difference between a business rule and a UI action. One is triggered automatically, per definition. One is triggered manually and follows a particular configuration.
Yeah, and I'll give you a quick example of that. In my system that I use for classes, I have a lab record, and on the lab record is an instructor, and maybe people that are assisting in the room. Maybe instead of creating an incident with them attached to it, I just want to reach out to them and say something. I could set up the email client to grab those addresses, and I can send them a quick message without having to go, look for the email address, copy and paste, put it in my Outlook, and blah, 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 and make a message. This I can just go click, and send it.
You mentioned a keyword in there, Kreg, and that's a great segue. You said I can send them a quick message, and that's the next thing I want to talk about is a feature called Quick Messages. Under System Policy, Email, Quick Messages. Oh, I thought I had my little cursor highlighter here, but I don't. I purposely turned these off so they don't show up in my first part of the demo. But there's two that come with your standard ServiceNow platform called Standard Response and Global Signature. And if I turn one or more of those on just by making them active, it's going to go, you can't do that because you're not in global. If you start out in global, so let's try that again. Do a quick list edit and turn those to true. Go back to safety. And away we go. Now, if I look at that email client, I have a chooser on top. It was already up there. I have a chooser on top that says, hey, there's your quick messages. You want to stick in the standard response? There it is. Dear customer. Of course, you could always make that appropriate and say, we are working on your issue right now, whatever. Change that to global signature, and you get that kind of thing. So you can stick in these real quick.
Auto reply on your. It's like an auto reply. Almost.
Or a macro or something of that nature. And these are very easy to define. You got global signature here. Let's make that global so we can see it. And you can put in HTML. This is your full HTML editor, so nothing surprising there. You can also restrict these to a user or group. They are not, mind you, they are not per table. There's no table or condition on here. Possibly we'll have that in the future. I'm not making any promises at this point, but this is the restrictions at this point, almost like a user criteria kind of thing. But if you could say, this is only for Chuck, then only Chuck will see this in the drop-down. If the TechNow team sees it, then the three of us will see it and nobody else will. So you can define these and filter them that way. So that's a little bit about quick messages. You know what? Let's make one for our safety issue. Let's go back to safety real quick, just so you can see how it's built. I don't think there's any great surprise or great technical challenge there. Let's go to quick messages, new. We'll just make a new one real quick. Call this thank you. Make it active. It's one of the few records I've seen where active doesn't default to true. For your involvement. The police will be in contact soon, for whatever reason that is. And you can also do things like URI _ref, put in those special $curly brace characters so you get those in there. It's not on the script, so I'm curious to see if it works. Oh, here's the interesting thing. If you put in a field, that was not the template that I want. Oh, I was doing quick message, sorry. Quick message, thank you, and there's my link to this. If you put a field in a quick message that doesn't exist on the table, for example, safety issue is extended from task, and I put in a field that doesn't exist. Maybe I put in, let's see, yours truly, you _governor. Okay, be careful about this, because if I do that and then go over to my email client, it will render a big fat nothing in the quick message. Oh, it didn't render. So when I was testing, it actually didn't render anything. That might have been the email client I was thinking of. So be sure you're using the fields that belong to that table. See, obviously it didn't report anything, but I had one where this just came out all blank, and I went, wait, what happened to everything? So if you see nothing, another debugging point, go check and make sure you've got field names spelled correctly, that kind of thing. Because note, on the quick message, there is no table, so there's no field chooser off to the right. So that's another caveat. There is another, yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say that might be a good reason to draft your quick message using the notifications form. So you can have that picker, you can make sure it's well formed, you can preview it, and then you can move it over here when it's well formed and ready to go.
Great idea. Stacey's just full of experience and great ideas. That's why we love her so much.
And that's why we keep her around.
The next feature I want to show you is simply a property. So when you look at the email client, and I'm going to render this right here, the quick messages, there's a feature to allow you to send an SMS message. So all of these are by default going to send out to the email device. There's a table called CMN_notif_device, which is set in your preferences by your channel, I believe it is, notification, create a channel. I've got a primary phone, a mobile phone. Neither are turned on, neither are defined. So if I wanted notifications to work, I could set those up. And there is a property called glide.email_client.show under SMS under option. Currently, it is false. And if I set that to true, my email client then has the option, spell it the English way, email client, wait for that to save. When I reload this form, I get a new checkbox up here. Send to each recipient's SMS device. Now, I could have a quick message go out or a client template that has a condition on it and say, all right, don't send it to the email, send it to their SMS device. Because we all know that people respond to texts a little quicker than they do to standard email, for whatever reason that is. So there's that option as well. But you got to remember that each recipient needs to have that SMS, that channel available to them.
And that they set up themselves in their set, right? So that's
correct.
An thing.
Yep, that's an opt-in thing. All right. Now, I told you I was going to go a little deeper into these email client options. Let's see if we can get this all done in time, because there's a few of them. So let's start with the email client configuration for my safety issues. I already showed you, yeah, that's the one I created in global. That's going to give us a little bit of a problem, isn't it? Let's redo that one real fast. So in global, delete that. That way I get to go through and build it again. That's what happens when you do this. Oh, I keep scrolling way too far. Okay, I'm in safety. I'm creating a new safety issue record. So default safety issue, active, true, table, safety issue. My recipient configuration, I already showed you that by default it's going to include active users and active groups. Let me save that for you and show you where that's coming from. Email client configuration recipient qualifier. So email client recipient qualifier has some predefined ones. Out of the box, active users, active groups. I came up with a couple more. I added a field to the sys_user table called category. And you could either be an employee, a vendor, a partner. I had a few different ones of those. If I want to make a new recipient qualifier, I give it a table, I give it a description so I can help my compatriots in the future. I say, use the email field from this table, and I got to remember, the display name is going to come from here. So it's how do you compose that email address? What am I looking for, and what am I doing the filtering on? So I filter on the email address, display the field name. I'll show you where this comes into play in just a second. It's how we got George Washington, that kind of thing. And, of course, I've got an order, just like the execution order before. I can add additional display fields. If you've ever done a reference field and you say, I want to get the company in there, I want to get the location in there, it's what shows up in that drop-down. I'm not going to add anything there. And then I select my query. So you can do it via condition or script. This one is, I prefer conditions. They're usually easier. And I say, when you're looking up users, go find the ones where the category is customer. So let's change this email client configuration for my default safety. Instead of active users and groups, let's change it to customers. Okay, that is the qualifier. That is the filter that I'm going to use on my email client. So instead of filtering out Benjamin Franklin, George Washington, whatever, they're actually my customers. At this point, I can't even type Chuck anymore because Chuck isn't a customer. Chuck's an employee. I can't type Kreg. If I were to type Kreg, oh, how did Kreg get in there? We're going to have to look at the data.
I hacked the system.
Yeah, here's Steve. You may actually be a customer. I'll have to look. And I say, let's go with Stacey. And it says, I don't know who Stacey is. It's going to say, okay, well, but I do have George Washington. Instead of that list of about 5 Georges that I had before, there's George Washington. And here's where I can add those additional fields if you want to put those on. Be cautious, like any other query. If you have a whole bunch of fields and you start dot locking, it could slow down your query. So use this judiciously. And I can put in names like that. And let's close up that. So the recipient qualifier allows you to change what filters do I see on the 2 CC and BCC fields. That's the recipient qualifier. And you're going to say, hey, Chuck, what happened to the from field? Well, remember I rebuilt this record? I didn't check the from. Let's turn that back on. The email client from address. So where'd it go? Let's display the from. And this went in the template, not in the email configuration. So let's look in the email client templates, default safety issue. Remember you were asking about how do you change that from address? And I said, well, under the sender configuration, you can either do text, you can take the default SMTP email account, you can select from a list, or you can write it into script. So if I look at, I'm going to take, obviously the SMTP email account is what you would expect. It's what showed up there with TechNow at example.com, whatever it was. Text is whatever comes from here. Select from list allows you to pull from email client from address. There is a table here called email client from address. And I put in some default stuff and said, there's safety, there's customer service, there's blah, blah, blah. If I want to limit that to just, say, 2 of them, I go back to my recent record of default safety issue client template and select from the list. And say, I want something that says safety. So let's do safety department and safety inspector. So that list field now controls what I'm going to see on the email client up here on the from field in a drop-down. You have no choice but to pick one of these 2 for this particular email client. So if I want it to be from the safety department or just from the safety inspector, I've got it covered there. So that's one way to do it per list, but I could also do it dynamically. And this is the fun part where I get to actually write script from script. Let's take these out just so we don't accept possible confusion. If I pull up script, it says, here is a script box. And you have 2 objects that are available to you. A from address query. This is a glide record. So all I'm going to do is do an add query to pare down that list that I was just looking at of all the from addresses, and a target record, which is the record I'm looking at, the current safety issue in this example. So I could say if the issue is from Germany, it goes here. Let me show you a piece of code that I got that explains that a little better. That should actually be target record right there. So I can take a value out of the target record and say, where's this coming from? Get the value of the country, and then do a switch, which is like if, else, if, and say, if the country is US or Canada, then the from address, take all those records out of the table and add the query to email. There's only like 2 fields, email and display value, to Service Desk US. Okay, I've got my whole drop-down list of one value. If the country is Japan, then I'm going to use servicedesk.jp, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm just adding these queries to say, filter this down. In my simple example, I didn't bother about the target record, but I added in the query, add an encoded query, because this is a glide record. I can use all the methods available to me with glide record, including add encoded query, and say email address starts with safety. So let's pop that into here and see what happens. Save that. Now you would think that if my list of from addresses has 1, 2, 3 that start with safety, remember I'm querying the email address, not the display name. I could change my query around if I wanted to, but I'm not going to. And then pop open this email client. My from drop-down list now contains safety, safety, safety. So very handy way to constrain those from addresses of who you want it to come from. Could be one entry, could be forced entry, could even be the text that doesn't appear on here, but it's going to come from there. So how are we doing on the Q&A?
You could certainly put your own, have it pull up your own or something like that from a script like that.
If that's the target record and you want to say it's from the assigned to, sure. You could say, let's put that in there. But you'd have to have a way to query that table and is your address in that table? Because remember, right. This list is coming, it's a reference field is what it is. It's a reference field to the email address from address records. Yep. You can put as complex a logic in there as you want.
Hey, Chuck, this is great how you can customize the from. What about the reply to? Can that be managed as well? And do replies always go back to the instance? What kind of flexibility do we have around reply to?
Reply to, I haven't seen any configuration, but I've done it on my own in MailScript. So you can use the email object when you're doing MailScript. I didn't want to get into that too deeply, but it's, what is it, email, I think we just type email script, and there it is, notification email scripts. You could put, I don't remember if it's in here, or if it's on my other instance. Hold on. No, it's not in here, but content delivery email, this is a different one. You could put email.setReply2 in an email script, and then that will set the reply to address for you.
Excellent.
I don't know. I have to check if that's available. Can you run email script? That's the next question. Can you run email script in a client template? That one I don't know. That's an interesting question. I haven't thought of that yet.
One of our listeners thought so too. That's in the queue.
All right, I will follow up on that one. So if we've got that queued, it will show up in the answers on that in the end. So in summary, I just want to wrap this up. The configuration for the client, the email client configuration, is done per table. Okay, this is where you say, show the from, show the reply to. I want it to be on this table, and here's what I want to constrain for the recipient qualifier. Here's what I want to display for the fields, and here's how I want to filter those addresses. Who is it going to? Okay. That wasn't it. But the templates, remember the client templates are on table and condition. We've now got that condition available to us up here. You see that. To be able to change, this template would be available on the issue table if it was work in progress. This one is user info requested, that kind of thing. And then quick messages are global. So keep that in mind as you're configuring these. I do have some more information coming up in New York. I'm really surprised. This thing has been around for years and years and years, but for whatever reason, the notification team is giving it all kinds of love in Madrid, New York, and I've even heard rumblings of more features coming out in Orlando. So not to jump ahead on our agenda, but we are scheduled to do our New York platform features in late August. So August 20th is the current date on that. Look for information, invites, et cetera, in your email boxes. Those come out. So I look forward to that. We've got a couple more minutes. Do we have any more time? Any more questions?
Some of the ones that are saying kind of adjust with the scripts. Can we change the from email address? Oh, based on the quick messages pick selection.
Quick messages do not have the ability to affect the from at this point.
One of the questions that I saw that's a pretty common one, pretty basic, that maybe we didn't show it, was will email sent through the email client show in the activity filters log? So with sent received emails, will they show there? I believe the answer is yes, but attachments will not be shown that they were part of that message. Is that correct?
That's my understanding as well, yes. And the whole issue about email attachments on templates has come up as well, too. Question, I see that fairly regularly in the community. Can I put an attachment on a client template? Because you want to say, hey, here's a PDF you want to read. As a quick response, or maybe even a quick message. That would be a good place for it, too. So I have that bug in our product manager's ear. I can't make any promises that it will be said. I know that it is an open enhancement on the list. I'm still showing the demo slide. I'm going to fast forward through the slides. Again, screenshots of all this stuff is available as we go. So with a few minutes left, I'm going to wrap it up. Again, if we didn't answer your questions, they will be answered on the community, and you get an email letting you know exactly. I mean, you click that link, it will take you to your question on this big list of whatever it is, hundreds or thousands of questions that we've got. Yeah.
And also keep in mind that somebody has said that Stacey's quick tip was a little too quick. So you can go back and watch the video. It'll also be posted there as well.
Yes, we will be posting the video, linking it to YouTube, embedding it in the community post. So if you missed it, you'll be able to watch it again and rewind it. So apologies, it was a little quick. There's a lot of information to get into here today, and I don't want to keep you over. The docs site is a great place to get more information about the email client. The docs team is aware that the scripting part of that from filtering needs some work as we record this. Hopefully by the time you watch this in later reruns in syndication on whatever your favorite television network or Netflix is. Oh, sorry, did I plug somebody there?
Right.
We'll have that updated for you then. Also, the community. If you've got questions about the email client, head on over to the community. Great source of information, lots of subject matter experts. I participate there quite frequently. We've also got the developer portal. If you want to go get yourself a free developer instance at developer.servicenow.com, you can get that and play around with this, test it out. That's exactly what I did. I didn't want to mess around in our dev instance and possibly blow something up. So, good, safe environment. And we've done now over 60 of these episodes of TechNow. So if you've got an idea for a future episode, please send it to us. And I recommend you look at the list first. Like I said, we've done email headers and footers, so we've got information on that. Most of it, we try to keep it timeless. But, of course, technology changes. You may say, hey, these are doing email scripts the old way. Easy enough to convert. It'll actually tell you. You probably want to use the new way of doing email scripts. So look through those topics. Lots and lots of good information out there. And, of course, ServiceNow.com/success for the Success Center. All Q&A will be available on the portal when we're done. And I don't know if you want to type that in, but if you just type in email client on docs.servicenow.com, pick your favorite release, whether it's Madrid or New York or London or Kingston, you'll find the appropriate information there. With that, I think we're at the top of the hour and ready to go. You can always contact us in a number of these ways with email, comments on YouTube when we get that posted. Give us a couple of days to answer those questions and sort through the post-production stuff. And thank you for joining us today.